You think being alone is weakness? No, it's the ultimate strength. When you have no friends, you learn to trust yourself. You stop seeking validation. You stop performing for an audience that doesn't care. You build a spine made of steel because there's no one to lean on but you. And in that silence, where most people would crumble, you find clarity. People fear loneliness because it forces them to meet the real them. But a woman who walks alone walks the path no one can take from her. Loneliness is often painted as a punishment, as though having no one around automatically means you failed in some way. But in truth, loneliness, when embraced, becomes one of the most powerful tools for building resilience. It strips away the noise, the distractions, the constant chatter of opinions that cloud your own judgment. When there's no one to turn to, you are forced to look inward. You begin to hear your own voice more clearly, and for perhaps the first time, you recognize its strength. This is where the foundations of resilience are built, not in the comfort of company, but in the discomfort of solitude. When the usual safety nets are gone, you learn how to catch yourself. You stop waiting for someone to rescue you from your pain, and you start figuring out how to stand again on your own terms. That process is not gentle. It tests you, sometimes breaking you down into pieces so small you wonder if you'll ever put them back together. But in that breaking, you start to rebuild with stronger materials. Discipline, self-awareness, emotional toughness. These are qualities that can't be gifted to you by others. They are forged in the furnace of your own trials. In the absence of friends, you encounter every emotion more vividly. Disappointment feels sharper because there's no one to dilute it. Fear can feel heavier without a hand to hold. But precisely because you face these emotions alone, you start to realize you can survive them. Every time you make it through a day you thought would crush you, your belief in yourself grows. Resilience isn't about avoiding hardship. It's about taking each hit and learning you can still move forward. When you're surrounded by people, it's easy to hide behind them, to lean on their strengths instead of cultivating your own. But loneliness removes that option. You become the only person in the room who can solve your problems. You start making decisions without asking for permission. You stop waiting for approval. You begin trusting your own instincts because they're the only guide you have. That trust is the seed of resilience. It's the quiet confidence that no matter what comes, you'll handle it. Resilience also comes from repetition. The more often you face challenges without outside support, the more natural it becomes. You stop panicking at every obstacle. You learn to adapt faster. You begin to see problems not as threats, but as puzzles. Without the cushion of others, you develop a sharper mind and a tougher skin. People often think resilience is a trait you're born with, but it's not. It's a muscle. And like any muscle, it grows through resistance. Loneliness simply provides the weight you have to lift. Another truth about resilience is that it thrives in the absence of constant affirmation. When you have no one cheering you on, you learn to motivate yourself. You become your own coach, your own mentor, your own source of encouragement. This self-generated drive is far more reliable than relying on others, because it's always available. You don't have to wait for someone to notice your efforts or celebrate your victories. You celebrate them internally, quietly, in the privacy of your own mind. That's where unshakable confidence is born. Over time, you stop fearing the quiet. What used to feel like isolation begins to feel like space. Space to think, to grow, to recover from life's blows. Loneliness teaches you how to be still without losing momentum. It teaches you that the world won't end if you stand alone, that you don't need constant interaction to have purpose. And as this understanding deepens, you realize that resilience isn't just about survival, it's about transformation. The woman who learns to face life with no safety net becomes someone unrecognizable from the person she was before. She becomes someone who doesn't just endure hardship. She absorbs it, adapts, and continues forward with a mind and spirit fortified by the very thing most people run from, being alone. Self-trust is the foundation upon which a powerful life is built, and it becomes even more vital when there is no one around to validate your choices. Many people unknowingly live their lives in a way that is constantly shaped by the opinions, approval, and praise of others. They seek confirmation before they take a step, a nod of agreement before they commit, and reassurance that they're on the right path. But when you strip all that away, when there's no external voice to tell you yes, that's right, or no, that's wrong, you're left with one choice: to rely on your own judgment. That is where self-trust is born. When you stop seeking validation from the outside, you begin to sharpen your ability to listen inward. You start paying attention to the subtle cues within yourself, the gut feelings, the instincts, the quiet awareness that tells you what is right for you, even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else. This shift is uncomfortable at first because most people have been trained from an early age to measure their worth through the eyes of others. Without that mirror reflecting back approval, doubt creeps in. But if you stay the course, if you continue making decisions and standing by them, you gradually build an unshakable trust in your own voice. Self-trust also demands accountability. When there's no one to blame for your choices and no one to share the weight of your decisions, you learn to take full responsibility for your outcomes, both good and bad. This isn't about punishing yourself when things go wrong. It's about recognizing that you are the primary driver of your own life. Every choice, every move, every risk you take is yours. That ownership becomes empowering. You realize that if you are capable of making mistakes, you are equally capable of making breakthroughs. Another layer of self-trust is learning to honor your boundaries and needs, even when they conflict with what others expect. Many people override their own limits to maintain relationships, to avoid conflict, or to fit into a group. But when you stop chasing approval, you no longer have to betray yourself to be accepted. You can say no without guilt. You can walk away from situations that drain you without hesitation. You can prioritize your peace over pleasing people. These actions send a clear message to yourself: I trust my judgment and I respect my needs. Over time, this trust becomes a compass. It guides you through uncertainty without the need for constant reassurance. While others may scramble for advice or permission, you act decisively because you've learned that your inner judgment is dependable. This doesn't mean you will always be right, no one is, but it means you've reached a point where mistakes don't shatter your confidence. Instead, they become part of the data you use to make better decisions next time. Self-trust also frees you from the exhausting cycle of comparison. When you are anchored in your own sense of direction, you don't waste time measuring your progress against someone else's. You understand that their path is not yours, and your worth doesn't rise or fall based on how well you match up to them. This mindset removes a huge mental weight because it allows you to focus entirely on your own growth, rather than constantly checking if you measure up. The absence of external validation also means you learn to celebrate your wins privately, without needing applause. There's a quiet strength in acknowledging your progress to yourself, knowing that no one else has to see it for it to be real. That self-acknowledgement becomes its own fuel, creating a feedback loop where every small victory reinforces your trust in your abilities. In moments of difficulty, self-trust acts as an anchor. It keeps you steady when others doubt you or when circumstances make you question your path. You've seen enough of your own strength to know you can withstand pressure without collapsing. You've learned that even if the entire world says you can't, the only voice that truly matters in the end is the one inside your own head, the one you've trained through trial and persistence to believe. Silence is often misunderstood. Most people see it as empty, awkward, or even threatening. They fill it with noise, conversations, and constant activity to avoid confronting what it might reveal. But when you stop running from it, silence becomes one of the sharpest tools for gaining clarity. It strips away distractions, removes the pull of outside opinions, and forces you to face what is really happening inside your mind. In silence, you hear the unfiltered truth, the thoughts and feelings that are often drowned out by the world's constant chatter. When there is no one around to talk to and no conversation to occupy your mind, you begin to notice things you would normally overlook. The patterns of your own thinking become clearer. You start to see the choices you've been making on autopilot. You start to recognize where you've been avoiding decisions, holding on to habits that no longer serve you, or following paths that don't truly align with your values. Silence becomes a mirror, and though what it shows you can be uncomfortable, it is also liberating. You are no longer distracted from the reality you need to confront. This clarity is not something that comes instantly. At first, silence can feel suffocating. Your mind will try to fill it with mental noise, replaying old conversations, overthinking the future, obsessing over details that don't matter. But if you sit with it long enough, the surface chaos begins to fade, and deeper insights emerge. You start asking yourself questions you've avoided for years. Why do I keep making the same mistakes? What am I really afraid of? What do I actually want? And in answering these questions honestly, without influence from others, you gain a perspective that is unshakable because it comes from within. Silence sharpens your focus. When you remove the constant interruptions of people, media, and external demands, you have the mental space to connect dots that were previously scattered. Decisions become easier to make because your mind isn't clouded by conflicting voices. You can identify the core of a problem without being distracted by irrelevant details. You can spot opportunities you would have missed in the noise. This ability to cut through mental clutter is one of the most valuable forms of clarity, and it can only be developed by allowing silence to do its work. It also forces you to evaluate your relationships and environment more objectively. Without the influence of others' emotions or agendas, you can see who actually adds value to your life and who drains it. You notice patterns, how certain people make you doubt yourself, how certain situations repeatedly pull you off track. This awareness allows you to make choices from a place of understanding rather than reaction. You begin to act with intention instead of simply responding to whatever is loudest around you. Silence also connects you to your intuition. That subtle inner voice is always present, but it is often drowned out by the chaos of modern life. When you make room for stillness, that voice becomes stronger. It starts guiding you toward decisions that feel right, even if they don't appear logical to everyone else. This intuitive clarity is not about blind faith. It's about recognizing that your subconscious mind is constantly processing information and patterns you may not consciously see. When you trust it, you often find yourself avoiding mistakes and moving toward opportunities that others overlook. Another aspect of clarity that comes from silence is emotional awareness. When you are constantly surrounded by people and distractions, you can easily ignore how you truly feel. You numb yourself with activity. But in silence, those emotions surface. You realize what you've been suppressing. Whether it's grief, anger, or even joy, you haven't fully allowed yourself to feel. This awareness is powerful because it gives you the chance to address these emotions rather than letting them silently control your behavior. Over time, you stop fearing the quiet. Instead, you begin to seek it out, not as an escape from the world, but as a way to see the world more clearly. Silence becomes your reset button, the space where you can step back, strip away illusions, and return with a sharper, more decisive mind. Independence is not simply the ability to live without help. It is the ability to stand firmly in who you are, make your own choices, and carry the weight of those choices without hesitation. Strength that comes from independence is different from the kind that comes from external support. Support can be taken away, but the inner strength you cultivate from relying on yourself stays with you no matter what. It becomes part of your identity, woven into the way you approach every challenge and opportunity. When you are truly independent, you do not wait for someone else to give you permission to act. You don't pause your life until someone agrees with your decision or reassures you that you are doing the right thing. You trust your own assessment of situations, and you are willing to live with the outcomes, good or bad, because you know they are yours. This kind of ownership gives you a quiet confidence that can't be faked. It's not about arrogance or pretending you know everything. It's about knowing that you have the ability to figure things out, even when the path ahead is unclear. Independence forces you to solve problems on your own. Without a network of people rushing to rescue you, you start developing skills you might have otherwise avoided learning. You teach yourself how to adapt, how to think creatively, and how to push through obstacles without waiting for a perfect plan or ideal conditions. You learn to act with the resources you have, and that resourcefulness becomes one of your greatest strengths. People who have always relied on others may panic when faced with uncertainty. But independence trains you to remain calm and deliberate because you faced uncertainty before and survived it. It also changes the way you value yourself. When you know you can handle life without leaning on others, your self-worth no longer hinges on whether people approve of you or choose to stay in your life. You stop attaching your identity to being needed or accepted by others. Instead, you measure yourself by your own growth, your own integrity, and your ability to live according to your principles. This shift makes you stronger because it frees you from the invisible chains of dependence, chains that keep many people in unhealthy relationships, unfulfilling jobs, or situations that compromise who they are. Independence also builds mental and emotional toughness. Life is unpredictable, and there will be times when help simply isn't available. People get busy, distracted, or caught up in their own struggles. If you've built your strength on a foundation of independence, these moments won't crush you. You already know how to move forward without constant guidance or encouragement. You understand that resilience is a personal responsibility, not a gift others can hand you. This self-reliance doesn't mean you reject help or connection. It means you are not defined by them. You can accept assistance without becoming dependent on it. You can enjoy companionship without losing your ability to function alone. That balance is powerful because it allows you to build relationships from a place of strength rather than need. When you are independent, you don't cling to people out of fear of being alone. You choose to be with them because you value them, not because you require them to survive. Independence also sharpens your decision-making. When you are used to relying on yourself, you get better at weighing risks, analyzing outcomes, and acting decisively. You are not paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong choice because you trust yourself to handle whatever follows. Even if a decision doesn't work out as planned, you view it as a lesson rather than a failure. This mindset is what allows you to keep moving forward while others hesitate, waiting for someone else to clear the way. The strength that independence breeds is steady, not dependent on circumstances. It doesn't crumble when people leave, when plans fall apart, or when resources are scarce. It is the kind of strength that carries you through uncertainty with your head held high, not because you have all the answers, but because you have learned that you are capable of finding them. When there is no audience watching, the need to perform disappears. Most people, whether they realize it or not, spend large portions of their lives acting for others, shaping their words, their behavior, even their appearance based on how they want to be perceived. They adjust themselves to fit in, to be liked, to gain approval. This constant performance is exhausting, and over time it erodes authenticity. But when you remove the audience, when there is no one to impress, you begin to live differently. You start making choices for yourself rather than for show. Without the pressure of an audience, you don't feel the need to filter your thoughts or hide parts of your personality that others might not understand. You can be direct without worrying about how it will be interpreted. You can pursue interests without considering whether they are popular or acceptable. You can take risks without being paralyzed by the fear of public failure. This shift frees enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy because you are no longer constantly managing how you are seen. When you are not performing, your actions become more aligned with your values. You stop saying yes to things you don't believe in just to appear agreeable. You stop participating in trends or conversations just to stay relevant. Instead, you start choosing based on what genuinely matters to you. This alignment makes life simpler. Decisions become clearer because you're no longer juggling the question, what will they think? You only have to answer, what feels right for me? Removing the audience also changes the way you handle mistakes. When people are watching, failure often feels unbearable because it comes with the weight of public judgment. But when you are working in private, mistakes lose their sting. You can analyze them without shame, learn from them without defensiveness, and correct them without feeling like the world is keeping score. This makes you bolder in your actions because you know you have room to experiment without the constant gaze of others. The absence of an audience also exposes which goals are truly yours and which were inherited from the expectations of others. Many people chase careers, relationships, or lifestyles simply because they look impressive to the outside world. They confuse applause for fulfillment. But when there is no one clapping, you quickly realize whether what you are pursuing actually satisfies you. If it doesn't, you have the freedom to pivot without the fear of disappointing a crowd. Operating without performance pressure teaches you how to be present. When you are always conscious of being observed, part of your attention is constantly tied to how you appear. This splits your focus, pulling you away from the actual moment you are in. Without that distraction, you can give your full attention to the task, the conversation, or the experience in front of you. Presence deepens everything. It makes your work more meaningful, your connections more genuine, and your inner life more grounded. Another transformation that comes from living without an audience is the strengthening of self-approval. When no one is watching, external praise is no longer an option, so you must learn to validate yourself. You begin to acknowledge your own efforts, to take pride in the progress you've made, and to recognize your growth without waiting for recognition from others. This self-validation becomes a steady source of motivation, one that doesn't disappear when applause fades. In this space without performance, you also discover the power of privacy. Not everything needs to be displayed or explained. Some achievements, struggles, and plans are best kept for yourself because they are still growing, still forming. Privacy protects them from premature judgment and outside interference. It gives you the freedom to explore, to fail, to start over, and to succeed without feeling like you are under constant scrutiny. Living without an audience allows you to drop the weight of pretense and step fully into authenticity. It strips away the need to constantly curate who you are for others, leaving you with the raw, unfiltered version of yourself. The version that makes decisions without compromise, that acts without hesitation, and that measures life by personal truth rather than public approval. Confronting the real self is one of the hardest and most transformative experiences a person can go through. Most people spend their lives avoiding it, hiding behind roles, distractions, and social masks that keep them from looking too closely at who they really are. They keep themselves busy so they never have to sit in silence and face the thoughts, fears, and truths they've buried. But when the noise fades and the distractions disappear, when there is no one else to perform for or depend on, you are left with nothing but yourself. In that space, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. Meeting your real self is not always pleasant. It means acknowledging the mistakes you've made without excuses. It means admitting to weaknesses you've tried to deny. It means facing insecurities you've masked with confidence or charm. These moments can feel brutal because they strip away the stories you've told yourself to feel comfortable. But the discomfort is where growth begins. You cannot improve something you refuse to acknowledge, and you cannot build strength on a foundation of denial. This confrontation also reveals the patterns that have shaped your life. Without outside influence clouding your vision, you start to see why you've made the choices you have, why certain relationships failed, why certain opportunities slipped away. You notice habits that sabotage your progress, beliefs that limit your potential, and fears that have dictated your decisions more than you realized. This clarity can sting, but it also gives you the power to change. You are no longer moving blindly. You understand the terrain of your own mind. Facing yourself also means taking ownership of your happiness. It is easy to blame circumstances, other people, or bad luck for where you are in life. But when you confront the real self, you have to acknowledge the ways you've contributed to your own situation. You see where you've hesitated instead of acting, where you've stayed silent instead of speaking up, where you've chosen comfort over growth. This awareness removes the illusion that your happiness depends entirely on forces outside your control. You start to see that while you can't control everything, you have far more influence over your life than you've been willing to admit. The process also uncovers your true desires, the ones buried under social expectations and the need to please others. When you stop pretending, you realize which goals were never really yours, which dreams you've outgrown, and which paths you've been walking only because they were expected of you. This is liberating because it allows you to redirect your energy toward what actually matters to you, not what looks good to others. Confronting the real self is also about acknowledging your strengths. People often think self-reflection is only about finding flaws, but it's equally about recognizing the abilities, qualities, and resilience you've underestimated. Without an audience to influence you, you can see these strengths more clearly. You remember the times you've overcome hardship, the skills you've developed, and the values you've upheld even when it was difficult. These realizations are just as important as facing weaknesses because they give you the confidence to keep moving forward. This process requires honesty, and honesty with yourself can be the most challenging form of truth-telling. It's easier to deceive others than it is to dismantle the illusions you've built for your own comfort. But once you do, you gain a kind of freedom that cannot be taken away. You are no longer living in a version of reality filtered by denial or avoidance. You see things as they are, including yourself, and that vision becomes the foundation for everything you build afterward. In meeting the real self, you begin to strip away the influence of comparison, approval-seeking, and fear of judgment. You stop shaping yourself into what others want you to be and start shaping yourself into who you truly are. This is not an overnight transformation. It's an ongoing process of self-examination, adjustment, and growth. But once you start, you can never go back to the way you saw yourself before. Owning an unshakable path means moving through life with a direction so deeply rooted in who you are that outside forces cannot easily sway you. It is the result of knowing yourself, trusting yourself, and deciding that your journey is yours alone to walk. Most people drift through life without this clarity, pulled in different directions by the opinions of others, the lure of trends, or the fear of missing out. But when you own your path, those distractions lose their grip. You are not easily seduced by shortcuts or pressured into detours because you understand exactly where you are headed and why. This kind of certainty doesn't come from arrogance or stubbornness. It comes from alignment. You've taken the time to understand your values, your priorities, and the principles you refuse to compromise. Your choices are not made to please an audience or conform to someone else's blueprint. They are guided by an inner compass that points only toward what is true for you. When opportunities arise, you measure them not by how impressive they might look to others, but by whether they bring you closer to the life you are committed to building. An unshakable path is not without obstacles. In fact, the more defined your direction becomes, the more you notice the resistance that comes with it. People will question your decisions. Some will try to discourage you because your choices make them uncomfortable or challenge their own lack of clarity. Others will try to pull you into their plans, expecting you to adjust your course to fit theirs. But when you own your path, you can listen without absorbing. You can hear their doubts without making them your own. You can consider their perspective without abandoning your own. This firmness in direction also shapes how you handle failure. When you don't have a clear path, setbacks can feel like complete derailments, sending you into confusion about what to do next. But when you have claimed your path, a failure is simply a part of the journey. It may force you to adjust your methods or slow your pace, but it doesn't make you question the destination. You understand that challenges are inevitable, but they don't have the power to redefine who you are or where you're going. Owning your path also means refusing to live on borrowed timelines. Many people let the pace of their lives be dictated by societal expectations, by what they should achieve by a certain age, or how quickly they should progress compared to others. When you truly own your direction, those timelines stop mattering. You move at the speed that is right for you, knowing that rushing to keep up with others can lead you away from where you're meant to be. Another strength of an unshakable path is the sense of stability it provides. Life will always be unpredictable. Circumstances will shift, people will leave, plans will change, but when you have a clear direction anchored in your values, you are not easily lost in the chaos. You can adapt to changes without losing sight of your purpose. This stability becomes a source of calm, allowing you to navigate uncertainty without the constant fear of losing yourself. Committing to your path also deepens your discipline. It's one thing to have a vision, but it's another to consistently take the steps required to bring it to life. When you own your direction, discipline becomes less about forcing yourself to act and more about naturally aligning your actions with your goals. You stop wasting energy on decisions that don't matter because the big picture is already decided. You know what you're working toward, and that clarity makes it easier to keep going even when motivation fades. An unshakable path is not rigid. It leaves room for growth and change, but it is anchored. You may refine your goals as you gain more experience, but the core of who you are and what you stand for remains steady. This is what allows you to keep walking forward even when the road becomes steep or lonely. It's what gives you the strength to decline opportunities that look good but don't align. It's what allows you to face both praise and criticism without losing your footing, because you've built your life on something stronger than approval.